Good morning. I'm Alina Islam, and I'm a mining analyst here at Red Cloud Securities. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm very excited to present Bradda Head Lithium to you, a lithium explorer with projects in the United States. To talk about its basin clay and San Domingo pegmatite projects in Arizona, as well as upcoming plans, we have with us Ian Stalker, non-executive chairman of the company. I know you'll have a lot of questions after the presentation, so please put them into the chat box and we will get through as many as we can. But before we get started, I do need to mention the fine print. For Bradda Head Lithium, there may be some forward-looking statements made on this webinar. Please read the cautionary note on page 2 of the Bradda Head corporate presentation located on the company's website. For Red Cloud Securities, I would highlight that this webinar is for information purposes only and should not be considered a solicitation to purchase or sell securities or a recommendation to buy or sell securities. We note that this webinar does not take into account the particular situation or needs of individual investors. Participants should rely on their own investigations and seek their own professional advice before investment. Please see our most recent research located on our website for Bradda Head specific disclosures. And with that, Ian, I'll pass it over to you. Please take it away.
Thank you very much, Alina. That was an excellent introduction, and the commentary about the forward-looking statements is supported and appreciated. And good morning from Vancouver to everyone who's on the call today. I trust you'll find our presentation illuminating as well as interesting. Most of you will know, because I'm sure some of you have been following the story, we are in the USA in the exploration of lithium, which we think has a major role within the USA in particular for the supply of battery material into their needs. We talked about the forward-looking statements, so let me just get through that for a second. And then we'll talk about right place, right time, and right people. We are in a tier 1 political location. Despite everything that's going on around about us, we're in Nevada and Arizona. We're highly ranked by the Fraser Institute of Survey of Mining Companies. We have a very competent, I believe, board and management with skin in the game, which is always important, I believe, here. Where we are in America, we have first-rate local and regional infrastructure, which is undeniable. Geological risk, well, we have what we think is a very interesting portfolio. Bradda has a range of lithium assets. One, the hard rock pegmatites, where we see spodumene present and have demonstrated that already. We've got lithium in clays that we'll talk about, a very large strategic size resource. And then very interesting enough, we've got brines in Nevada, as well as in Pennsylvania and in the Texas Smackover area. And we'll talk about that as I go through. So there's a diversification, if you like, of geological risk as a consequence. We're very conscious of ESG, and we've worked very hard with the local communities in Arizona in particular, where most of our work to date has been done, in making sure that we have the right relationships and we follow strict, very clear ideas as how we can manage our ESG footprint. And so we believe, that we are in the right time, in the right place with the right people. The USA, without a doubt, needs its own lithium, and we are there to supply it. So that's what we're going to talk about. There's the team. I won't take too long with it, but we've got a range of people there, decent amount of experience. I think key for us in many ways is the operational team, which is Joey Wilkins and Pioit, as well as Don Haynes and Adam and Yatendra Sharma on the right-hand side. These guys, particularly Joey, he comes from Tucson. And so we cover our area in Arizona and Nevada very comfortably. Joey spends the bulk of his time at the site office in Wickenburg in Arizona. So we are well served, and he has an excellent pedigree and experience to match with his credentials in terms of running the company forward. Here's where we are in terms of our material. As you can see, we've got a range. Our main focus of attention to date has been in the Basin Clay project in Arizona and the San Domingo pegmatite project, as you can see on the left-hand side of this one. But we have the brines called Eureka and Wilson Flats in Nevada, and they're fairly close in terms of proximity to the large Albemarle operation, which has been going for some time with the traditional lithium and brine situation. And then we have a interesting package of ground both in Texas and in Pennsylvania with the lithium and oil brines that we'll talk about as well, because that is a story that's been gathering significant attention recently. So this one I won't take 2 minutes with. As you can see, we're well positioned for the main end users within the American market space. And we're also very close to a lot of the existing projects that are in the area, but we are strategic for the lithium end users. And I think the pegmatites in particular, when we start moving, and we are intending to move with pace, when we start moving towards a production scenario for the pegmatites, it's simple, it's traditional routes, and I think we can get access into demonstrating that we can supply to the market a spodumene concentrate. Low carbon footprint, obviously we own 100% of the projects. We've been well funded. And we've still got over $1 million in the treasury, but that's going to get boosted very shortly because there's a clear vision to an additional 3 million when we reach the 2.5 million tons of lithium carbonate equivalent in the basin. And we are optimistic that this will occur this month of June. We are lithium asset focused, striving to develop net zero carbon footprint, which of course is the natural goal of all companies. We will unlock the value we've got. We've got the brine projects we talked about in Nevada, and we've got the oilfield projects in Texas, which adds value at the moment that's not really reflected in the share price. And then we've got experience. You know, we're not going to stand still. This is a time, I think, when there's opportunities within the lithium market space for some distressed lithium companies to be looked at. We'll concentrate in the States and potentially Canada, but that's where our focus will be rather than offshore. Let's start with the pegmatites. We now has, as you can see in this slide, 33 square kilometers of ground. So significant land package tying up the bulk of the pegmatite environment that's down there. And there has historically been 8 lithium mines on our claims. So there's a very strong LCT signature. We have drilled, we've had 2 campaigns so far, and we have identified that the lithium-bearing pegmatites are present throughout our belt. It's greenstone host rock prominent with the LCT signature, plus tantalum and cesium, etc. We've done 107 holes in total for 13,000 meters, so we've been concentrating just on shallow targets to date. And the best intersection you've got, as you can see there, was 32 meters at 1.6, so it certainly wasn't a shabby intersection. And we had a few more as a consequence of that. We have a large RC program under construction for the second half of this year. As you can see, we're reporting it here, Q3, Q4, following detailed geology and geochem, which we're busy with at this moment in time. There are no environmental or social roadblocks permitting within BLM and state of Arizona. So that's a big bonus for us in terms of the pegmatites. And I just bring to your attention that we have done a little bit of metallurgical test work. And the reason I mention it is because we were able to demonstrate that from the average core, and I put average in inverted commas, as you can imagine, but from the average core of about 1% Li2O, we were able to produce via gravity only a 6% Li2O concentrate, which is obviously well within the specifications that end users need for the concentrate to move to the refinery setup. So we're able to do that, and by doing it only by gravity, you can imagine and you can understand why I say the permitting of it, because it's really not invasive in terms of water demand or in terms of tailings disposal, because in reality it is just same crushed rock, and potentially once we've extracted the lithium, the crushed rock material is there for the road building demands that exist significantly in this part of the USA. So we're excited very much so about the San Domingo pegmatites, and it's where our attention will focus. We've got a range of targets. You can see this one here is Midnight Owl, where we've done some previous drilling. You can see the highlights there. There's a 31.8 meters we talked about, but again, there's a range of other decent intersections there. So there's something going on, and you can see we've got our own internally managed outline. We have a gentleman on board Hugo, who is quite capable of throwing together the resource indications, which saves a lot of time and effort when we go for the 43101 classification. But there you can see the kind of pegmatite and the grades in there. So we already have the base for, in some of the areas where we've previously drilled, for a resource number going forward. And that, of course, is very exciting. That's another area, Morning Star. And these are all within this 33 square kilometre range and all reasonably accessible from one main production site. And you can see there the outlines of the ore body and the intersections we've found. Again, some decent grades in there. And remember, it's only shallow targets. So we've yet to test the deeper source of this, but it's definitely there. And we will do so in due course. But at the moment, we're building up the resource close to surface that will be open pittable and then able to be taken through a small treatment plant for a gravity concentrate only, I emphasize. And you can see some decent grades sitting in there. Another target is the Dragon target, and as yet, that's undrilled. Previous mine, as you can see there. And you can see some of these surface samples that we've taken, almost 8% lithium lithium oxide, I beg your pardon. It's got a 600 meter strike length, 3 parallel pegmatites running in widths of 5 to 30 meters on surface, so decent thicknesses. And apart from Dragon, there's 1 or 2 other small historic mines in the area and excellent road access. So that's going to be one of our targets going forward, as well as looking at some of the previously, some of the previously identified resource potential that we've got. So next steps, excellent high-grade intercepts, as I've mentioned, along almost an 8 kilometre long corridor. We have refined the mineralization in 3D models at Morning Star, Midnight Oil, White Ridge and Jumbo, and they will get some follow-up drilling to see the expansion of these resources, or these tentative resources. But the new targets include Dragon and Yellowstone, where we've got some significant channel samples taken from it. We've been on the ground, we've mapped them. They are decent targets. We mentioned previously Dragon, but you can see Yellowstone there, a target of 900, almost a square kilometre in terms of outcropping. So it's visible spodumene confirmed. So we are really looking forward to it. We're going to go this time with a shallow RC. We first went with diamond drilling to get an idea of the orientation of the ground, and it's not easy interpretation, but it helped us enormously. So this time, with a cheaper but more extensive program, we're going to do RC in it and pick up some simple results as a consequence. So we're really looking forward to kicking off our San Domingo situation. Lithium and clay is a different story. The lithium clay is also in Arizona, and as you can see in this particular slide, we have that new 2.5 million tons target in our sights at Basin. We have completed the drilling. It finished in early May. We got the last assay results Friday, Saturday. And we have got our competent person, independent competent person, busy with the resource calculation. And we are optimistic that we will achieve greater than the 2.5. Some of the indications we've had recently are encouraging, both in terms of thickness and in grades. So we're quite comfortable that we believe that from a financial point of view, we have a great chance of getting the $3 million as part of the LRC royalty payments. We've been talking to them, obviously, in anticipation of this. And that puts us in a position where going forward, we're well funded for the next 12 months. So even in a slightly subdued lithium market still, there's no need for us to go out and raise any money, which is a nice situation for a little junior to be in. This really talks about where we've drilled and where we've seen the extensions. I won't wax lyrical about this, only because drilling in lithium and clay is, while it's not simple, it's not geologically the most challenging environment. It's fairly consistent in terms of the lithium deposition within the structures. There's limited faults and limited challenges in terms of the interpretation. So that's allowed us to move with speed. And as a consequence, that last drill program we did cost us, well, only was 8 holes, allowing us to build from 1 million to 2.5 million tons. So with the ground that we've got in this area, there is huge potential to add even more tons if that's what we chose to do. But 2.5 million tons running at, say, plus or minus 1,000 ppm Li2O is a great starting point, and it is strategic in terms of size and opportunity. That's a cross-section, which just really confirms the consistency of it, and nothing really to talk about there, except I would mention that the lower clay, which we previously kind of ignored, not totally, but kind of has come into our horizons again, because these last few holes have found that the lower clay grades are not dissimilar to the upper clay grades. So there's an even bigger potential going forward. We have, outside of where we've drilled, we've got a large land package you can see there, Basin West Potential, and we're busy with a plan of operations within the state, making sure that we use the right people and doing the right things to ensure that the next phase, when we get going up there, and it's not immediate, and it's not even, possibly not even this year, but when we get going, we'll have the permits, etc., in place and environmental permission to move forward. We are in also significant ground in Wikiup. I forget what it probably tells me somewhere in this presentation, 24 square kilometres of ground were picked up. So we've got a large land package there. We've got preliminary results, but we don't intend on doing any drilling for this in the near future. But just bear in mind the significance of the size of this lithium and clay scenario and the potential for it to be a real feeder for a long-term lithium production operation. But then we come into what's suddenly become much more interesting, which is the oil brines in the Smackover district of Texas in particular. Historically, some of the measured lithium in the oil brines has come back at 561 ppm, which would be significant in AMD's world, but particularly in the oil guys' world, who think they've got the technology via DLE to extract that kind of material. I previously worked down in Argentina in the brines down there. They're not oil brines, they're traditional salar brines. And anything above sort of 350 would get us excited. So the 560 number is well within the kind of things that we should get moving with. So I mentioned Standard Lithium had formed a joint venture with Equinor. Maybe I didn't, but they formed a joint venture with Equinor recently. And with ExxonMobil have been making a lot of noise about the way to go forward in this and their ability to develop DLE, working DLE technology to extract the lithium from the oil brines. And in fact, just today, by sheer coincidence, there was another press release come out with Berkshire Hathaway, which I guess most of us know, and Occidental, where they have put together a joint venture to do something similar in the northern area towards California. So there's a huge amount of attention moving forward here in the Texas area of the Smackover, and then in the second area we've got, which is in Pennsylvania, you can see the package of ground we've got there. Again, there was a press release come out highlighting a significant, I think was the word they used, massive lithium find in Pennsylvania in the oil shale waste streams. So both the Pennsylvania and Smackover ground that we have are areas of great interest at the moment. They're attracting large oil companies in particular to develop these resources in conjunction with DLE technology, which obviously, again, back to the start of this presentation, the American government are encouraging to get their own lithium production. And of course, from brines, it's less invasive than open pit mining or underground mining, etc. So we're obviously going to be working on those areas as well as our traditional brines that I'll come on to in a minute. But focusing for the short term for ourselves on the pegmatites while we talk the story up about the lithium in oil brines in Pennsylvania and in Texas. I mentioned we've got the traditional brines. They are in Nevada. As you can see there, it's a 14 square kilometer package in Wilson, in Nye County, and in Eureka, we have a 12 kilometer square package in Lander County. They are not a million miles away, as I mentioned, from the Albemarle operation, which has been in operation for some significant time. You can see the work that we've completed. Basically, it's the MT geophysics, etc. And we've seen shallow and deeper sub-horizontal conductors. And in a nutshell, basically, they've identified there is perched water tables below surface, as you can imagine. And the density would suggest that they do contain brine. And that brine, no surprising, in particular in the Wilson target, if my memory serves me correctly, there is a geothermal stream next to us, and the hot spring, which is used at the moment as a bit of a recreational area up there. There's a couple of RVs with a big tub. The overflow from the tub flows over the area where we've got lithium and clay on surface, obviously, but where we've got this potential water body below, and that runs at 10 ppm. So we're pretty optimistic about the opportunity of finding substantial and decent quality grade lithium in brines in these areas. The reason we've not targeted is obviously financial. It's not for lack of interest. We thought that concentrating, and we still think that concentrating in the pegmatites is the appropriate way to go forward for best bang for our buck. We've talked about ESG when I first kicked off the program. Environmental, we continually work at it. We are conscious of making sure that we dot the I's and cross the T's. We work very closely in terms of social with the local communities. It is North America. There is a number of Native American groups in the area, less so in San Domingo, more in the basin, and we've been able to undertake our work program in harmony with the groups there and kept them fully informed, both Native Americans and farmers and pastoralists in the area, because obviously it's an area where water is an issue, and so we're very conscious of managing the water resource. And in terms of governance, we operate ethically, respectfully, and responsibly, which you could imagine would be common to every, or should be common to every small and large mining company. Water conservation initiatives have been proposed for Basin and Waking Up. We've been in consultation constantly with the First Nations, and we have created, in fact, a community website which allows the local stakeholders to get access, and probably more appropriate than the corporate website that's available for investors. Low carbon footprint by sourcing lithium in the USA for the USA market. San Domingo, we've drilled 13,000. We're going to another program in the second half of this year, which we are really, really keen to get going in, because we've learnt a lot. When we first started drilling, it was, I have to be honest, a little bit of a wing and a prayer, only because of historical mining. It gave us a great introduction, if you like. But now we've done the drilling, now we've done the ground truthing, now we've been more and more valuing the quality of the assets and understanding the pegmatite distribution, etc. We're desperately keen to get going, and I hope we'll be there in the second half of this year. We've got the new resource target, as we've talked about in the clays. We've already got over 1 million tons. We're heading towards a 2.5, and we have a level of confidence we'll be there, meaning that the 3 million royalty payment will come to Bradda Head, and that puts us in great shape financially going forward, with no need to raise any money. We have the exciting oil brines in Texas and Pennsylvania that I've just talked about, and that's getting attention and will continue to get attention. So for little Bradda, it's not going to be out of the headlines, that's for sure. We work with the ESG environment. We are supportive of the mining jurisdiction. Next door to us, what's interesting in the basin, is the Freeport-Baghdad copper mine. So both the pegmatites and the basin are areas where mining has traditionally happened, and therefore it's not a brand new dramatic change to what the historical background is. And I think we've got the right team for unlocking this value. So in a nutshell, that's where we are. 3 great projects, possibly 4 if you want to use the lithium and clays, but that will move forward slowly but surely, but great position to be in financially and technically. Thanks, Alina.
Well, thanks a lot, Ian, for introducing us to Bradda Head. Just as a reminder for our participants, you can type your questions into the chat box at any time. So, Ian, we've got a couple of questions already. Maybe we'll start with San Domingo. So the first question here is, some of the mineralized intersections are intermittent and down dip of the pegmatite bodies. So how do you carry out a resource estimate on it?
We haven't used all of the drill data. We've only used the drill data where there is consistent indications of continuity that allows us to throw a model around it. And remember, it is internal. It has to be checked by the QP, etc. But we have been very conscious of, a lot of our drilling was informative to begin with rather than resource drilling in reality. So we've only concentrated, Alina, on those areas that are significant in terms of continuity and being able to interpret a resource from that. But it has to be QP checked, obviously.
So the RC program that you're hoping to complete later on this year, any idea on how big or what the size of that will be?
The guys are busy with the program right now because they are submitting their permit applications. We've sort of allocated in our own mines roughly about $500,000 worth of work. And at sort of $80 a meter, you can understand fairly quickly what that gives you in terms of total meters drilled. And again, it's all shallow. I think the deepest hole we've drilled to date is probably 100 20 meters, maybe not even that. So it's all shallow targeting. So we're going to get a lot of bang for our buck. And of course, RC drilling too is relatively quick.
Okay, so at Basin, I guess once the resource is done, are there any plans to continue exploring that?
Yes, there always is. There's no doubt that there is a huge potential in terms of lithium and clay. We have, the amount of work we've done concentrating in that basin area where we've been at is relatively small in terms of surface area versus the total package. And we know from surface sampling that the lithium and clays continue. And we would not expect it to be much different from where we are at this moment in time in terms of thicknesses and grades. So there's a huge potential, and yes, as necessary, we'll step out in that drilling. But I think what's interesting for us in the clays that we've got to date is, unlike some of our colleagues in this part of the business in lithium and clays, we've found a decent amount of molybdenum being present, which is rather odd. Well, it's rather odd in terms of its association with lithium in the clay environment, but it's not odd when you think that next door to us in the basin area is the Baghdad copper mine, and they have a molybdenum byproduct. So whatever event, and I'm not geologically smart enough to tell you, that whatever event took place, there's obviously been some seepage of the molybdenum into our area. And so one of the things we'll be looking at is that economically sufficient to be looking at it as a byproduct. So I think the next set of work we'll be doing will be a little bit more test work on understanding the simplicity, not only of getting the lithium out. We've previously demonstrated that we can get 99.5% of the lithium into solution, but the challenge is getting the lithium out of solution into a product that is battery grade specification at a recovery and a price that's appropriate to this market.
All right. I don't know if you can answer this question, Ian, but how much will the fraudulent funds reimbursement be?
I can't remember what about in the public domain, but there has been press releases about it, and I know I can let everyone know that the checks, and I love the way the Americans spell checks, it's CHECKS. The checks are in the bank, and we are happy with the amount of money we've got. It's substantial.
Okay. What do you think is the long-term spot price of lithium?
I wish I knew. I wish I knew. We seem to be stable, plus or minus at the moment, in the 1,000 to 1,100 price range. As I mentioned in my presentation, for us at the San Domingo project, it's purely at the moment a gravity separation. There's no flotation, so there's no extra work required to pick up any more recovery. We get recoveries of about between 55 and 60% to the gravity concentrate. With that kind of production at the gravity level only, we're well within the sort of $400 or $500 target range that we would like to be in. So even at $1,000, if that's what it stabilizes at, then we should be in a nice little positive cash flow. I would just add that, Alina, remember, it is the USA. And the USA may, there's no guarantees and etc., but they may really, if they really want their own lithium to say that these cars made in the USA are totally USA-based cars, then they better pick up some of our concentrate. Maybe there's a premium associated with that.
So I guess on that note, have you had any discussions with any government agencies, or is it too early?
No, we have. We've been talking to them about the clays, particularly this molybdenum story, because they seem to love byproduct opportunities. Don't ask me why, but every time we talk to them, they always say, lithium, great, but what else are you making? And so we, in the clays, we talk about molybdenum, and in the pegmatites, we talk about the cesiums, etc., that are byproduct potential. And there has been interest expressed by the DOE, but it is not, you don't just walk in and say, can you give me a check, please? There is a significant amount of work that's got to be done. But yes, to go back to your question, we have engaged and we will continue to engage with them as we go forward. And there is interest in both projects.
So I guess longer term, what would the objective be here? To go into production or to sell certain assets?
Good question. Look, the reason we are excited about San Domingo and the pegmatites, it's not going to be the largest pegmatite resource in the world. It's going to be relatively tight, open pittable. but decent grade, as you can see from the intersections we've got. Some of it has previously been mobilized and disappeared. You know, there's certainly long traces of pegmatites, but not necessarily all containing spodumene. But we think that we can make a decent little operation, which will allow us to cash flow our step out drilling, if you like, over and above where we've already, or where we will be drilling in the short term. And that because we've what it was, I think it was 33 square kilometers of ground we've got. So going forward, I think the resource can grow, but short term, we think as a little company, based on just a gravity operation itself, that's the kind of thing we can get funded or even rent equipment for. And that's an operation we can get into being sooner rather than later, Alina. So that would be our main focus. The clays, yeah, we will work slowly and steadily on it. And if the market gets a little bit more frothy, then yeah, and I believe we're on a rising tide here. I believe that the bottom has been reached. It's just a case of how quickly it rebounds and how far it rebounds. But we believe that the clays are significant. I think they've got they're as attractive as, say, the Thacker Pass type clays, as attractive as some of the other clays in Nevada. So they're there to be managed. And, you know, maybe Arizona is a better part of the world than Nevada in reality to extract clays from, because Baghdad is next to us and the infrastructure associated with that mine. But on the brines, well, yeah, maybe as we go forward, Alina, we'll look at joint venture partnerships of people who want to earn into that kind of project. We are small. I'd like to think we're good enough, but we're small, nimble, etc. Concentrating on the pegmatites is simple for us, but we'd be happy to entertain partnerships or whatever the case might be associated with the oil brines in Smackover in Pennsylvania, and the same idea in the traditional brines in Nevada at Eureka and Wilson.
Okay, so at what point would you think about signing or looking into offtake agreements?
Joy, our COO, Tucson, Arizona-based Chief Operating Officer, he and our structural geologist stroke resource evaluator stroke man Friday are on their way to the benchmark conference in Las Vegas. And it's regarded as one of the better benchmark conferences throughout the year. Obviously, the preliminary conversations that we've had on both of these areas, the oil brines and the traditional brines, they continue, and we'll just see how they unfold. But the benchmark, so I guess to answer your question more directly, we're already in preliminary discussions, and we'll just see how far they get. But the benchmark will be a nice time to get the story out in greater volume.
Okay, any comments on the core shareholders and changes?
Interesting. Yes, we have in the UK, we use Red Cloud in Canada. In the UK, we use a couple of other brokers. And they have been fairly active recently in bringing forward some new interested parties to get positions in Bradda Head because of where we are and where we're going. The LRC company who have the royalty with us, they have an ownership in Bradda Head. They are historically, in recent years, last couple of years, they've been moving out in terms of holding equity. So I think we can do something there to avoid impact on our share price in the short term with these interested parties, and potentially LRC being interested too. So, watch this space. There's nothing guaranteed and there's no promises, etc. But we recognize that there is a growing interest in Bradda Head.
All right, Ian, I guess the last question here, two parts maybe. Number one, how much cash do you have?
Lots. And then I suppose you mean Bradda Head as well.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
No, we reported, I think in this presentation, we still had $1 million of our own money, and our anticipation is that 3 million will come in. So that would give us sort of end of June time, starting the second half, by the time we finish paying the bills, somewhere around 3.5 million. And remember the fraud money someone brought up, that's a nice little bonus coming in as well. That's not in the numbers I've given you.
So then, what's your budget towards each of the projects for this year?
We will anticipate spending roughly about $500,000 in the San Domingo pegmatites. But again, Alina, if we get awfully excited about what we see, etc., we'll obviously push that forward because we can see that being a near-term production scenario. On the others, we will just be maintaining more or less as you go situation, other than maybe a little bit more drilling in basin. We've got to get permits to do that and some test work. So it's not going to be excessive expenditure. And remember that part of the reason for that is we've streamlined Bradda Head so that we have, although I wax lyrical about the COO and his team, it really is a CEO and two other guys. So for us, one project at a time is a sensible way to do it and maximize attention to that.
Okay, well, that's it for the Q&A portion of the webinar. Ian, thank you so much for taking time to host this webinar with us today.
No, thank you for the opportunity, and hope the guys and ladies present enjoyed it.
Just as a reminder for our audience, our next webinar will feature Atco Mining, and that's on June 24th at 2 p.m. Eastern. Thanks for tuning in with us, everyone. Have a great day.